Welcome to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, bringing baby boomers proven strategies and innovative products for getting fit, staying fit, so you can live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Here's your host, best-selling author and fitness advocate, Phil Ferriss.
This is Phil Ferriss, and welcome to our show. Never Too Late for Fitness Radio provides answers and straight talk about fitness, nutrition, and healthy lifestyles for people over 50. Our goal is to educate and advocate health and fitness strategies that help you to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. On some shows, we feature everyday people like you and me who have acted and reclaimed their health and fitness. We all love a success story, especially if the person is facing the same challenges we are. Hearing real success stories helps inform, motivate, and inspire us to live a healthier life. On other shows like today's, we focus on health and fitness industry professionals who share how they help their clients who are over 50 achieve their goals. If you find yourself getting overwhelmed with life's challenges, becoming distressed, or frustrated by change, this show is for you. If you're looking for an effective and practical tool for dealing with anxiety, depression, or frustration, this show is for you. If you're looking to connect with your more authentic self or become more aligned with your purpose, this show is for you. My guest today is Bill Protzmann, who is an entrepreneur, musician, husband, father, and proud member of the human race. He's the founder of Music Care, Inc., the first for-profit business established to teach you how to give yourself effective, evidence-based self-care using nothing more than the music you love. Bill's work has been recognized by the National Council for Behavioral Health with an award of excellence, the mental health industry equivalent of winning the Oscar. Thanks, Bill, for being with us on the show today.
Gosh, it's such a pleasure to be here, Phil. Thank you.
Now, to start off with, Bill, can you explain what Music Care is and how people over 50 can benefit from it?
You bet. So all of us have loved music all of our lives. And at that wonderful moment where you realize you're in your midlife transformation, I guess sometimes it feels like a crisis, which happened for me, early 50s happened for me. You start to recognize how much of your life has been there to support you in how you live. And Music Care, if you will, is sort of a marker maybe of my midlife transformation, where I've rededicated myself to something that I've always loved, which is music and playing the piano, in a way that reaches out to people and says, hey, this thing that we've loved all the time of our lives, this music, can actually support us in the next part of our journey. And it does that in amazing ways. We'll talk about that. So Music Care is an invitation to accept music as a part of whatever self-care you're already doing.
Okay. And can you give me a little specifics about how Music Care works?
Sure. So lots of research. Last few years, there have been amazing strides made with neuroscience and with things like physical pain, where we've been able to show that pain can be lowered just by listening to music, and lowered by not just a little, but in one study by half, 50% less pain meds required. So that's a great thing as we wake up in the morning with our aches and pains and get ourselves moving again. A little music is a good thing for that. It also lowers stress, and there's a great deal of anxiety for those of us who are in midlife right now, wondering what's going to happen next. Music is a great way of being able to lower our stress. And then in the case where we have to heal, music is also a great healing agent. They found that it increases your level of pituitary growth hormone. That's the hormone related to healing. So it helps you heal more quickly by listening to music. And those are just physical aspects. We can talk about emotional, mental, and spiritual too. But with those three things, think of all of I don't know how many thousands of people it is who have some sort of pain and are medicating for that with black box meds that would otherwise kill you. It's the reverse of what we want. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's really important to know, first of all, the dangers of using medication, and secondly, the safety of using music.
Okay, so music can replace medications and therapies that may not be helpful to individuals.
Sure.
And we all are aware of its power because everybody's been at one time at a dance, or a concert, or someplace where music has taken us to a different place. It has affected us emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Yes.
Now, you've had a very specific journey to go from, the pianist to this person who's sharing this information and helping people. So maybe you could talk about your specific journey to create Music Care and how it's touching the lives of others.
Sure. The journey toward doing what I do now with Music Care began many, many years ago, and it started with an awareness of how music was being received by people listening to it. I've had so many opportunities to watch that, and it's fascinating to me to be the person who makes the music and then watch the huge variety of responses that people have. Sometimes they'll come up to you after I've played, and someone will be trying to say something, and it usually comes out as like, "Thank you for that music. I really needed to hear it." When somebody says, "I really needed to hear a piece of music," there's something more going on there, right? They're aware that something inside them had this hunger and that the music filled it. And often I have no idea, beforehand that somebody's going to have that response, but it's so gratifying to have it. And of course, we all know that music can make us laugh or cry, and I've seen those kinds of responses too. There's another kind of response that's really interesting to me. Being a classical pianist, I'm more aware of the classical music scene than others, but it's very frequent in a classical concert for people to fall asleep. And I think that rest may be some of the best rest that they're getting. Because if the music allows you to relax that fully, what amazing things can happen in that space. The music is still working on you, even though you're not conscious. Mm-hmm. It's still having all those great effects. But there you are, for the first time, you're able to let go and just sort of be in that place. Even if it looks to the rest of the world like you're asleep, it's still working. And so I'm so grateful when I see people asleep in my concerts, right? Isn't that a funny way of saying it?
Yeah, let's hope not everybody in the audience is asleep.
Exactly. But there's that. I fall asleep to music. I mean, the one time in my life where I'd hit my lowest low, I recognized that there was a reason for that, and that I needed to support myself in that place, not to support myself to go take my life, although that's what it felt like. It felt like an end of life situation where I had this choice. But instead of reaching for a gun or grabbing a rope or whatever, I just sat in the chair and put on music and let it mind me. And of course, being in that place, it was very sad. It was very depressed. So I had these well of emotions coming up, sadness like I've never felt. But I let the music repeat. And when I woke up, so I fell asleep. The sadness left me. And then my body's next response was to go into repair, just to be in that state of rest where the body and mind and emotions can all repair and then come back to full presence. So even in my own life, music has kept me well while I'm asleep, if that makes any kind of crazy sense.
No, it does, because when does our body heal? It is when it is relaxed, it's not under stress, it's not under anxiety, it is resting and repairing. It needs that pause in order to recharge and rejuvenate. And a lot of times we don't give ourselves that.
Yeah, it came for me by necessity. I mean, oftentimes it's unavoidable when you hit those walls, Phil.
Right. I know very well. So let's focus for a minute on self-care for the 50-plus population.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest pitfalls they face when it comes to self-care?
Well, your life after 50 is one that has 50 years of experience in it, and that can often be 50 years of physical habits that don't serve us well and result in pain. It could be ways of thinking that have brought us to a place where we suddenly realize that it's not going to take us any further. So as you become aware of these things that are, yes, they can be obstacles, but as you become aware of them and can address them with tools that will help, it's not always possible to cure something. You feel your knees, you feel your hips, that just other physical things, but it's always possible to cure your thought. And if your thought is taking you down a rabbit hole that isn't serving you, becoming aware of practices that can refocus you on what you really are, what's coming from your heart, what you feel that you know about yourself now that you didn't know at 20, when you took that career job.
Mm-hmm.
There are self-care modalities that can very easily help you make a transition as well. Because it's difficult to transition if all of you doesn't go. You can't leave one foot in the past. It's possible, but it makes you nuts. So transition the whole thing. And I'm thrilled to see that there are so many great leaders right now in their 50s or older. Wayne Dyer didn't even get started until he was in his late 50s.
Right.
So I'm so thrilled to see great leaders who have come to a place in their life where they recognize that there was some wisdom, and they're willing to share that with the world in ways that can help us, employ tools to facilitate our growth forward, our change forward. The tendency to want to stop and say, well, I'm going to retire early, fish, do other stuff. That's nice. But human beings aren't really laid out to stop. We're active individuals, and we want to connect with other people and move forward and have interesting conversations. And it's just an enlivening thing if you have a way of being able to stay engaged in that world. And self-care practices like yoga and meditation, even for folks over 50, I do yoga regularly. Those two practices can help bring a presence and a centeredness to your life in a way that your life wouldn't be centered or present if you didn't do them. It's like the invitation of midlife is to reach out into areas and explore things you haven't tried before. And thanks to the internet, it's very easy to find those things. In fact, there's so many of them. It's sometimes a challenge to sort them all out. But if you find a practice that is evidence-based, that's a fantastic thing to use in your toolkit. And there are practices out there like, what's the tapping one? EFT, Emotional Freedom Tech. These kinds of things are widely known and understood, and they're available, and they work, and in amazing ways. They can literally change your life if you find a practice that resonates for you. And not all practices will. I mean, if you can't move, yoga's not a great thing. I'd be silly to recommend that. But you can do mental yoga. There's a certain amount of thought structure that is available to us to help change our thinking. And clearly I'm an advocate of music, but if music isn't going to work for you, then let's find a different way of integrating a new way of thinking into your daily routine of care. The obvious one that we all think of right away is prayer. That's a fantastic self-care modality. It connects you to yourself and to the other in a way that very few other practices do, possibly with the exception of meditation. Although singing does that, or listening to music can do that too. Let's start with what we know and then sort of expand it, if that makes any sense. Like take what you know now, and then look at the fringes and see it. Hey, could I extend prayer by adding music to it? Could I extend prayer by combining it with, singing? Like sing my prayer? What would that be like? Things like that, right? You get curious.
Okay, and then you are developing these practices. But I want to go back to the persons that's not aware of. He may be aware of the need to do practices, but doesn't do it.
Yep, that's tough.
A lot of people I run into at this point, and they say, "Well, what are you doing to take care of yourself?" And it's, pause.
Never thought about it.
Either I haven't thought about it, or I'll get around to it when I take care of everybody else. And this is very prevalent for women. There's also men that get into it. They're so used to being on the job and focus on the career, as it's the next project, the next deadline, that they leave their health, their well-being behind, and don't develop these practices that will allow them to keep their body and their mind and their spirit functioning optimally. And it's fighting that first part of, it's okay to take care of yourself. Matter of fact, you can't take care of anybody else if you don't take care of yourself.
Yes, I agree completely. And well said, by the way, because I've been that person, just running as fast as I could without awareness, actually, of my ability to sustain that tempo. And there are amazing people out there writing books. Like one of my favorites is The 21-Day Miracle. And the author points out that you can run hard for a while, but you need to rest, like we just talked about earlier. And if you don't build that rest into your game plan, you're going to burn out. And that's not a good thing. You physically just won't be able to sustain it. Athletes, whatever, they're good for that. But even the ultra marathoners have to rest at some point. Even if it's 100 hours into the marathon, they still have to take a rest. So life is really good for us because it will send us little messages.
Right.
And if you recognize that you're getting a message that's, Bill, stop, care for yourself now, that's a fantastic way of being able to take a pause, find out what's going on, do some intervention if that's what you need, do some inspiration if that's what you need. There are self-care practices for both kinds. But if you don't pay attention, the signals will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And oftentimes, when I hear of someone who's had a heart attack or a stroke, I first of all have such great compassion because the universe is sending a clear message to that individual that it's time to stop, it's time to rest, it's time to take stock of what's happening here, because the current approach is not sustainable. It's run you into a physical wall.
Or an emotional wall, which generally then manifests itself into some kind of physical ailment, whether it be a chronic disease or, like you said, a heart attack or a stroke.
Well said, yes.
So you get that juncture and you say, okay, I need an intervention. I need to come up with a practice that will help me. And everybody knows, like you said, everybody's experienced music. They use it, but they don't use it as a tool. So what are some of the misconceptions people have about music that may prevent them from actually using it to its optimal effect?
I'd like to answer that question by saying it's hard for us to slow down and stop enough to allow full presence. Full presence is so important. When I'm at the piano, I'm fully present, and the voices in my head don't talk. In that kind of modality, for me, I'm fully present. I don't know about other modalities that get me at that level, just because although I practice yoga and meditation, I've been practicing piano now for 55 years, and yoga and meditation only, for the last 20 or so. So maybe after another 30 years of yoga and meditation, I'll have a similar experience there. But this idea of music takes time. So you're going to listen to a piece of music and it's going to last 5 minutes. So just the ability today to give yourself 5 minutes of anything is a challenge. But if you recognize that those 5 minutes that you're going to spend doing some form of self-care have exponential rewards in terms of your stamina, in terms of your mental acuity, in terms of your emotional stability. And when I talk about spiritual, I mean things like kindness and gratitude and all of the attributes of what we practice that are best practices. That spirituality that opens you up to connection to other people, helps you be authentic and vulnerable, all those yummy things that they talk about, if you can spend 5 minutes and it will exponentialize the rewards in those areas, well, that'd be 5 minutes I'd want to spend. And without anything more than that as a preface, find the song that you love, and for 5 minutes, just sit there and listen to it. Allow your energy to be focused on the music, and let the music focus on you. And you're going to have other thoughts. Stuff will come up. Oh, yeah, I've got to get that at the market tomorrow. Just let them go. This is a meditation practice, if you will. But allowing the music to come into you that deeply, it takes time. You've got to make the time for self-care. And, no equipment required other than the phone you already have and some headphones. I like the over-the-ear ones, and knowing what music you love and allowing that music to be with you. And your internal compass will guide you. You'll put on the song, you go, no, I don't want to listen to that right now. And you'll find another one. And you'll listen to that. And eventually you'll have sort of a selection of songs that can help you spend the 5 minutes at the end of your lunch break, giving yourself a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual readiness to enter the game again after lunch. You'll find the time for that, especially as you start to see the rewards that come your way from doing it. So it's safe, it's effective, no side effects. Those are the kinds of modalities that you want to have in your toolkit. versus having to take, the Motrin that I have to take when my head hurts. It's there's no right or wrong to this, but there is definitely a best practice, and that best practice is caring for yourself.
Now, tell me, you've had just wide populations. You're talking about people, veterans, people with depression, anxiety, people with addictions, and music has provided a breakthrough for them. Why does music reach people that other modalities or self-care tools doesn't?
This is a great question. Music works on us, of course. When you hear things, the signals go and hit your amygdala, and that releases the chemistry that gives us a feeling, emotions. So there are a lot of self-care modalities that work at the higher level, at the cerebral cortex level, where you actually have to think about what's going on, like you engage yourself in the practice in a thinking way. Music is sort of a letting go practice. Rather than having to think about the song that you're hearing, you can let it go. And its effect, because it's on the lizard brain, the amygdala, is that you have an emotional response. We feel that. There's an effect that comes over us, a effect that comes over us in response to the music. And that's the basic of sound and rhythm. That's been going on for thousands of years. And if you allow yourself the feelings that music brings to you, you're giving yourself care. Guys, we like to stuff our feelings. We're taught how to do that. Stiff upper lip, don't show your anger. Well, that's not great psychological practice. And music, even if you actually have to be out there with the game face on, music can let you feel safely and let go all of the underlying emotion that may be hiding behind your game face. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now you're talking, earlier you talked about evidence-based information, and like I said, there's a lot of research that talks about the chemical response and the physiological response that music causes that gives the effects you were just describing.
Yes.
Whether it be, getting yourself up for a game or dealing with a certain period of sadness or getting happy for an occasion. Sometimes, in most cases, we can't help but let music affect us. We start hearing it, and all of a sudden our feet are tapping, and we're not even thinking about it. We're just doing it because of the connection it has in the brain and what it does inside our bodies. So it can be very powerful. Can it be? Is there ways that people can misuse music as part of their self-care?
Only if you think about it, Phil. And by that, I mean, music is going to have its effect on us because it does work on the lizard brain, regardless of whether or not we want it to. And that effect, like when you hear a jackhammer, you're instantly annoyed or whatever. You respond to that sound immediately. And you respond to all sounds immediately. When one hears something, it's going straight to the lizard brain, and the lizard brain is preparing us for a response to that sound, whatever it is. Our physiological response is already in motion, and our thought process, the cerebral cortex, engages something like 100 times later. Now, it's all very short. It's these are millisecond kind of responses, but you have that amazing long period of time between when your body got ready after what it heard and your mind decided to engage and decide what to do about it. Like, okay, I heard that gun go off. I heard the siren behind me. Now I can choose how to respond. Oh, it's a police car. Oh, he's pulling me over. Okay, I better pull over. And the initial fear, the response, the trigger, is mitigated once we think about it. So, yes, if you decide not to think about what you feel and consciously turn off your physiological response, that's a problem. Plenty of science on that. There's a fantastic list of 28 experts who each contributed like 2 sentences to an article on Your Tango about this very thing this morning. It's just not great to stuff our emotions. The emotions are like guardrails for us. And who would go driving along the edge of a cliff without a guardrail? I mean, it'd be difficult to do. You could do it, but the guardrail really helps you stay on the road. So if you consciously decide that you're okay with some emotions, but not okay with others, that's like taking away part of your guidance system. And to sort of blow that out into the way that science is talking about it, human beings can feel 4 primary things, and some will say 6 or 8, but there's actually 4 that make sense. So joy and sadness, of course, we're familiar with those. They're kind of opposites. And fear and anger. And if we decide that joy and sadness are okay, for example, and feel them, but then decide to not feel fear or not feel anger, we're cutting ourselves off from our guidance systems. And in my case, for example, I chose not to feel anger for whatever reason. And after many years of doing that, found myself very depressed. So there's a physiological, emotional, mental combination of things that happen if you choose to not feel, quote, negative emotions. You're going to cut yourself off from a lot of power in the first place, and you're going to give yourself a not so great psychological problem you're going to have to solve somewhere down the line.
Okay, because if you stuff it, it's going to come out somewhere.
It's going to leak out someplace. And, let's look around the world today. Is there can we see any evidence of the leaking of anger in the world? So there's a lot of people who are clearly angry about a lot of things, and justifiably so. I mean, let's be honest. But our practice that got us to this place where the only way we can seem to relate to it is through anger hasn't been a great global practice. We need a practice that allows us to have discourse and communication and compassion for people who don't think the way we do. And all of that happens way before, it's not too late. But if we can get that kind of practice in play, we won't have the outburst of anger that we're having now. And here we are with the outburst of anger. So we have to figure out how to unwind from that, how to remediate that, and get back to discourse again. Get back to the best practices we know work, like gratitude and compassion and kindness and respect. So, yeah, that's evidence right now of our global ability to stuff the, quote, negative emotions. It's not helping.
And a lot of those things are outside of our control. So the key to effective self-care practices, they are things we control. Can we've talked about the transformative nature of music. Can you describe a little bit how you teach people those skills so it's at their command as opposed to feeling it at the whim of music?
Yeah, so your dog isn't getting wagged by the tail.
Right, absolutely.
Yes, so the most difficult part of learning to use music for self-care is to open up to the emotions that you don't want. Nobody likes to feel scared or angry. I mean, let's face it, it's just not fun being depressed or anxious. So to open up to feelings that you don't want without judgment is the most complicated but also most powerful practice of music care. And why is it complicated? Well, because of all the learning that we've been given that we, don't be too scared, Billy, don't be too angry, Billy. That kind of stuff from our childhoods often is a rule set that's interfering with our ability to care well for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with feeling angry or scared. What happens when you feel angry and scared and do something that breaks things and hurts people is often we're trying to avoid that road. And that's a good road to avoid. I mean, there are times where if you're a combat soldier, fear and anger are part of your practice. You're drilling to be able to perform well under those situations. Same with pro athletes. I mean, there's ways that we deal well with fear and anger, but the average bear, you and me, it's more of a challenge to allow those feelings to come up. And once you realize that there's no judgment behind them, that they're just brain chemistry, basically, that takes a lot of the charge out of it. And if you're able to say, yes, I'm very angry right now, with the confidence that that anger energy doesn't result in an acting out, but results in a positive step forward, that's a new realization for people. And it does take practice to be able to get to that point where you can move with positive energy that has anger as its impulse, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. So if I wanted to start using music care as a practice, what would be the first step or two I would take to start incorporating it consciously into my life and into my own self-care practice?
Sure. I like to help people sort of take the music that they love and align it with the emotions that are present in their life a lot. So that you have a song that you can go to for anger, you have a song you can go to for fear, you have a song you can go to for joy, of course, and sadness. Now, there are other things that come up in our lives, like anxiety, which is a sort of a complicated blend of emotions. And emotions are not always clear. They're non-binary. The emotions come up like a color palette. But once you've identified a song that sort of fits with the kinds of intervention you need in your life, if anger is a frequent one, let's say you've got a boss or somebody who's just not nice and they're always ragging on you, and you have to deal with that. In that kind of a situation, a piece of music can help let those feelings, when they come up, flow through you safely. So you're not holding on to them. And that unlocks the energy that's positive in them that you can use to respond in that situation. So the practice starts with knowing what your music does to you.
Okay.
And bringing that to mind. And then making sure that you have enough different kinds of music to cover all the spectrum of what you feel all the time. And some of us are great with joy. We never need songs for joy. We were able to turn on joy, no problem. But we need songs for anger because that's challenging. So taking out of all of that joyous music, trying to find a piece in there that supports anger, that may not be the first place to go. You might have to look at the mood playlist on Spotify or something to suggest a song that you might resonate with for anger. So that personal introspective exploration is where your practice of music care starts.
Okay. And
putting those tools in place for the emotions that come up all the time in your life, the guardrails you see frequently on your drive down life, that's the place to start. And then being able to engage with those. It turns out that with a little practice, our minds remember whole pieces of music. You know this because we get earworms a lot, right? Those songs that won't go away.
Right.
But that's something our minds do. They remember music. So instead of having to sit down for the full 5 minutes and listen to the whole song with practice, you'll find that your entire system is responding to the very first notes you remember. It has the same physical effect on you as if you heard the whole song. So this can be a quite efficient practice as well, provided you train your brain to be able to engage the way that you want it to. And, I'd love to sit down. I'd spend 20 minutes or an hour listening to music right now. But there often isn't enough time. But I do have 10 or 15 seconds where I can dial back into music. And if I need sadness, it's like an actor learning their cues, right? If you need to experience and let that sadness go, just remembering the music will open it up for you. And then the time is spent just being like present with that sadness. And it flows. The more that you practice letting go of sadness or letting go of fear, the better you get at it, and the emotion won't last as long. And in some cases, it'll go from being completely debilitating. That's me in the chair, depressed that night, like listening to my suicide music. It'd go from being completely debilitating to being a place where you can say, oh yeah, that music, that kept me alive. And all the emotions are still there. But you have this wonderful reflection on how it has kept you and minded you and just let you stay human, I guess is the best way of saying it, Phil.
Okay.
We all do need to be human. So that's like a couple of steps. Does it go further? Yes, because music is much more than intervention. It can open up the possibility for authentic connection. And do we need that today?
Absolutely.
Connecting with someone over music, like when you expand your practice to include your spouse or significant other, and you both are practicing music care together, that can result in some interesting insights because you can find that the same music is minding you, each of you differently in ways you hadn't thought of before, which builds understanding and trust and of course deepens the relationship as you reveal these things about yourself. It's a marvelous modality in so many ways.
Well, because it's been there all the time, we take it for granted. And then to do it purposefully can reveal parts of ourselves that we never knew was there.
Well said. Yes.
So that's very interesting. So what would be the biggest piece of advice that you can share with my audience today about starting to incorporate music care into their life?
I like to say, change your music, change your life. The two are so intertwined. And as you've pointed out, we're not always conscious of how closely sound and rhythm are related to who we are as human beings. But everything about us vibrates. Every single cell and atom, whatever molecule in our body is vibrating. And I even read the other day that music is tension and release, right? It's the vibration of the air and the silence. I even read the other day that they discovered that this a kind of sound at a microscopic level is what holds the DNA molecule together. And when the the incorrect tension is present, the molecule can unravel and create things like cancerous cells, grow this way because the right sounds aren't present there. Isn't that crazy? And they've measured sound in outer space. There's some amazing things that are part of our universe that are vibrational in nature. And if we're not vibrating in alignment with that stuff, it's like listening to one of the horns that's out of tune in an orchestra. It grates on you.
Right.
So coming into alignment with the rest of the orchestra is part of what's going on here.
Okay. Now, Bill, if people want more information about you and Music Care Inc., where should they go?
Great question. There's a website where a bunch of information is available, including my online course. I call it a quest because it's more than just learning information. It's holistic. But there's free stuff there too. So if you go to quest.musiccare.net, because we're all over 50, we know that quest is spelled Quest and not any other way. Quest.musiccare.net. Click on the free stuff links. If you want to know more, there's more about me. You can find a whole bunch of stuff, including video and audio, music, and just tons of free information out there for you guys. So check it out. Do contact me if you have questions, or contact Phil. Comment on this episode. We can answer questions that way.
Well, that's great. Well, Bill, thank you so much for sharing your passion, your experience, and your expertise. I mean, I got some great insights that I know that I can use. And probably more importantly, I'll be able to share with other people that help them connect with themselves and others in new ways. So thank you very much for sharing your information.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Phil.
You've been listening to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, hosted by Phil Ferris. To learn more about the guests or resources on our show today, or to listen to past episodes, go to nevertoolateforfitness.com.